Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Council President Ben Stuckart and I will each have a few brief comments before we take questions. We are deeply concerned and disturbed by the facts contained in the report that have findings of an independent investigator. The conduct is unacceptable and definitely falls short of the community's expectation of volunteers who sit on city boards and commissions. The conduct of these three members is a very serious violation of the public trust that we cannot tolerate. For that reason, we have asked for each of the three members to resign immediately. I've also requested the City Council begin the process of removing the three from the Commission. The investigation that we're talking about today began on May 4th. Due to the nature of the allegations and the independence of the Citizen Commission, we hired an independent investigator. The timing of these allegations are particularly troubling. A second round of ombudsman interviews was complete this week by the selection committee, which is prepared to forward three finalists to the Commission after a national search for the candidates. We remain firmly committed, as we said last week, to the Police Ombudsman Commission that delivers independent citizen oversight of the police division and will keep the process of hiring a new ombudsman moving forward. We are disappointed for the community, obviously, and for everyone who put in so much time and effort to get us to this point. We are committed today to make and to continue to support the hiring of a new ombudsman, move for a swift resolution of the matters facing the Commission, and keep the public updated along the process. It is important that we act quickly to avoid any prolonged disruption to the independent citizen oversight process. Decisions on appointments and removal for independent citizen ombudsman commission do rest with the City Council, and so at this time I will turn it over to the Council President Ben Stuckart, for his comments and on the report and any discussion of next steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. These findings are unacceptable, and the City Council is prepared to take swift action to ensure that the Police Ombudsman Commission can get back to its important work. The next steps are being discussed and include several contingencies to account for any action that we take in removal of Ombudsman commissioners at this time. The Mayor and I have each called for the resignation of each of the three members of the Commission. The City Council is also beginning the removal process at the Mayor's request. We are scheduled to meet as a City Council tomorrow afternoon and could consider the matter in a legislative session at that time. I have also, as of immediately when it was posted on the website, I have sent the commissioners a letter informing them that this complaint was filed on April 16th, and when the internal committee decided that there was legitimacy to it, passed on May 14th, they hired Colette Leland and Cammie Menke-Smith of the law firm Winston & Cachet to perform this independent investigation. Now that we have the written report and the redacted version is on the city's website, I've informed the commissioners that are named in this report that they have 24 hours for a written response to council, because we'd like to consider the report and anything that they have to say by tomorrow's afternoon's council meeting. So that'll be in the council briefing center tomorrow afternoon at 3:30. But when discussing matters of personnel, oftentimes we do go into executive session. But if we took action at all, that would be in an open session. I'm very disappointed. There are many different findings of this, ranging from breach of confidentiality, which each commission member signed an agreement to keep matters confidential, yet in public meetings, numerous times people that had filed complaints were named. We take workplace harassment very seriously. The work of this Ombudsman Commissioner is the work of past council members, many different community members, and to have it threatened at this time is very harmful to our community. Thank you, and with that, we'll take questions.
How can the commission continue to operate if it has only two members?
That's a contingency. Oh.
Go ahead.
That's a contingency we're talking about. The main action that we're asking the commission to take right now is to hire a new ombudsman. If there are only two, they cannot perform that. But the mayor and I have talked about an emergency contingency. We're going to reach out to the police guild and see if they'd agree to let, for this one time, the city council appoint an ombudsman. And also, the mayor and I are committed to the fact that immediately as we have Ombudsman Commission appointments open, that we will be reaching out to the community with a timeline that's very strict and moving forward with appointing new commission members.
Given what you know now, do you regret either appointing or approving these three commissioners onto the commission?
Well, I nominated 2 for the appointment. Obviously, knowing what we do today, what we're talking about today is obviously their actions while on the commission. And so that is what's critical, and we need to continue the legitimacy in that. And I think it's critical, as I look at this, of the transparency of what we're doing here, the timeliness of responses to the issues, and then obviously the truthfulness. And so as we talk about this investigation, it's about the actions while they were on the commission. And so that is what is critical as we move forward as really one of the most robust citizen oversights of our police division that you see in the state. And so we need to, I'm committed to that process, and frankly, like the Council President discussed, we have 2 options. One is obviously a one-time selection or a quick recruiting and an appointment of more commissioners so that we could have the majority. So we do have that option and to stay on schedule. We were very delighted to see the interest in being the ombudsman. I believe over 40 had submitted nationwide. We did, the selection committee did interviews, and we're very pleased with those that were in town the last 2 days. And I hear that they are ready to further 3 nominees to be considered. So the issue is the oversight is definitely a top priority, and will continue to move forward one of the 2 ways that we just discussed.
What happens to the other 2 members, one of whom was heavily involved within the discussion and complaints in conflict with the current OPO?
Yeah, but none of the findings in the report point to any findings regarding him.
Okay.
So, I read the report on Monday, the unredacted version, draft version, and then they redacted this and it became public. And I read that back to front, and Councilman Allen, I don't remember any findings about the other commissioners. They may have been involved in the discussions, but nothing implicated them in any of the findings.
Is I'm wondering what concerns you the most. There's a lot of different angles, a lot of different frustrations. I'm wondering, as a mayor or council president, what concerns you the most?
Well, I think at least I feel myself as an elected official, we have a responsibility for all 2,000 employees of the city of Spokane, and to put them in a situation where a volunteer board is creating an intimidating and harassing workplace is pretty horrific. And then I also think about the very last finding on the last page, which is Commissioner Dolezal has breached her duty to keep identifying information confidential. And this is, this is a police ombudsman commission where if people are going to bring complaints forward, it needs to be kept confidential, and to break confidentiality is just flat out wrong.
There are also concerns raised about the objectivity of some of the members on the OPO. I'm wondering if an activist can be on the...
That when I read that, we've all got our points of view, so I take that finding with a grain of salt. I think there are much more serious concerns in here whether somebody can be an activist and be on the Ombudsman Commission. There are some serious findings of fact in this report. This isn't like allegations at this point. There was an allegation made, independent investigation, found facts. This is their findings. And so it's very disturbing on multiple, but some are more serious than others.
So 2 of the commissioners have indicated that they never were advised what the complaints against them were. They just knew that some kind of investigation was being conducted, and their position is they never had a chance to defend themselves against any specific complaints. Is that how you would characterize this investigation?
Well, I think what's critical is there was and you'll see that there was a myriad of interviews done. And obviously some of those were those that were that are named in the report. But I think what is critical here is this is part of the process of them receiving the report, them reviewing it, and depending on how we go forward, that's why subsequently not only I take it as a position that is appointed, I took the position that I would request them to resign. If they so choose, the process continues, and I've, as per the ordinance with the Ombudsman Commission, which requires the mayor to request the process continue, then the council then takes the next step. And I think then that's critical in this Ombudsman Commission to be truly independent. It is to go through that process, and so if they do so choose, they now have that opportunity.
There's certainly a need to fill these vacancies as quickly as possible, but given the background resources, we're not adequate to properly vet these people. Do y'all plan to do background checks and more vetting as you see new commission members?
Well, as someone who appointed them, I think you bring up two issues. One is, this is actions for two of them after they got on the commission. And so that's one issue, not prior. The second was a very robust discussion that was led on how do you select for this commission in particular versus the rest, and what is the right of volunteers, and what is meaning to do what level of background check. And I'll tell you, as we reviewed and as we looked at this, so to not diminish people's interest in this commission, was to select the level of background check we did. These issues that come up as you look at whether it be anything that would have typically been done, either financial or criminal, you look at the allegations that are now coming, in particular with Ms. Dolezal, whether those would have ever popped up. These things have gone over a multitude of times. So two different issues here. One being that this report talks about actions after they were appointed. But separately is the level of background check for this level of commission. Does it make the community rethink that? This is a community board. We had several meetings talking to the community, in particular they were led by Nancy Isserlis, our city attorney, to take feedback of what we should look at. What should I look at as the nominator for this? And so we took that community feedback. Will there be a difference in community opinion at this time? That's why we have two options in front of us. One is a one-time selection of an ombudsman, or the second would be to refill these seats, and that may then trigger a discussion of whether we should look at these positions for this particular commission differently than others.
And so we did have a discussion internally about the level of background check that we'd perform, and when it was first proposed to have a background check, I didn't have anybody writing me to do more background checks. The community was speaking very loudly that they thought any background check on these commission members was not a good idea and would dissuade community members from wanting to be on the board. So that's a new discussion now in light of these. But in this report, these 8 findings, I don't think that we can say, no matter how deep a level of a background check we did on those 3 members, that workplace harassment and any of those, I don't think would have, the propensity for such behavior would have been found no matter how deep a background check we did 6 months ago. But to go back to Sean's question earlier, is do you regret appointing them in light of this? Absolutely, yes.
There's a lot of these, the allegations and problems and conflicts have been discussed with the mayor. The mayor has been alerted, council members have been alerted to many of these issues throughout the past 7-8 months. What did you do in response to that? Was there anything besides the actual investigation that was done to try to fix these problems?
As the head of the employment portion of this, there was substantial things that were done in there was several discussions. There was discussions with the legal counsel. There was discussions with the employee and change of work environment. There was ebbs and flows of things becoming better and things not, and ultimately resulted in the filing of a complaint. But I think it's critical that, as any employer, there was a substantial amount of different to change the behavior, and both with the council, with the commission members, with their legal counsel, discuss their roles and responsibilities. You'll see in their commission meetings a substantial amount of training on things like our open public meetings rules, like confidentiality, they like our ethics code, and sign statements to the fact that they received that. And so that's all, as we bring on any new commission members, they work in a public environment, the prerogative of the employment and the administration administration was to bring this to resolution. It did not come to resolution, and ultimately that's why we also then have this process, which we implement from time to time.
A major source of conflict on the commission was the role they believe the OPO should have. Should they be able to, is it just a matter of appointing a new ombudsman, or are they going to be involved in writing new policy? I'm wondering what you see as the role of the OPO.
Oversight of the ombudsman, which is, I think, why we need to move so fast on resolution of this issue, so that we have an ombudsman there and there's no vacuum of the ombudsman with the Ombudsman Commission trying to define what they can and can't do, which is where you start getting into gray areas. And they're the independent oversight of the ombudsman is what their role is. So that the ombudsman doesn't answer to the council, and so the ombudsman doesn't answer to the mayor. That's the functionality of them.
It is to implement the ordinance. There was a significant amount of work to talk from what the council president said about the community members that came together, previous councils, the current council, put a lot of work into how do we do this. We had huge, community meetings about the nuances of how to implement it. At this point, that is the law of the city, and it is the responsibility for the council, for the commission to work within that ordinance. Whether they have personal opinions about further changes to that, that's what should come forward then to the council to consider. That is what needs to happen if they do believe that. But their role is to implement the ordinance as set forth by the council and signed by me.
Can you explore a couple of things? You said that you're looking for approval from the police guild to have the council appoint the next ombudsman?
Every change to the ombudsman, like we just filed an ordinance a week ago and briefed it in public safety on Monday on kind of how we tweak the interim ombudsman to ensure that we don't have a gap. And we got a letter from a lawyer the day it was dropped that it's a subject of bargaining. And so anything we do to the ombudsman ordinance is a subject in their viewpoint of bargaining. And so we're going to talk to them and say, can we just change this in order to ensure that an ombudsman is in place so that we don't get a lawsuit filed. We've gotten caught down that lawsuit wormhole before on this specific issue, and so we need to avoid that up front and be very honest with them and say, we have a situation, we'd like to we have people that interviewed in the last 2 days the ombudsman position, and when they settle on the committee settles on a finalist and wants to offer us 3 top candidates, we'd like to be able to act and have city council do it. And we got to be open and upfront that we can't try to do something like that and then have that come back and put us in another paralysis.
I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud, but
you are, Dave.
You keep saying committee. It sounds like very soon, if you get your desire here to have these 3 commissioners resign, you won't have a functioning committee.
2 separate issues, Dave. In the ordinance, there is a hiring selection committee that is made up by one body. In the past, that same committee used to refer the 3 finalists to the mayor. It now for hiring, and now that same committee refers to the commission. And so two-step process. They have spent the good part of the last 60 days doing the interviews and going through the applications of 40, whittling it down over the last 2 days down to 3, and brought them into the city to do personal interviews. And now that list of 3 finalists goes forward by ordinance to the commission. What the council president is talking about is a one-time change of whether that would go to the council in particular for this one time, and then as we have new commissioners. So 2 separate processes, both in the ordinance and how that was negotiated and ultimately put into law.
But without a change, it still has to go to a potentially 2-member commission.
Yes.
Yes, which is why we're looking to change it.
Any time frame on how long that change might take?
Well, I think you have there still is the other option if we were able to fill the slots, literally in the next few weeks to a month, and whether that would align. Or whether we go this route as we sit down and decide whether we have or look at whether we have the authority for the council to make that selection. I would say, and I'm committed to either route, and to work now that we know what the job descriptions of the commissioners are. We have a lot of interest in these commission slots, that I believe there to be qualified folks out there that could serve in this capacity. That being said, the timeliness of that and then also the hiring is critical, and so we're at that decision point today.
The trip to Oakland, was that just Dolezal and Dominguez that went on that trip, or was it the entire field?
I know that Commissioner Dolezal went. I didn't know that Commissioner Dominguez had went.
I'm not sure. I just had seen a reference to that. I'm just wondering.
There was one in the report, and I've seen an email strings very similar talking about one convention that we know that all four, or I think all five of them attended. I know that's one of the email strings I've seen.
Sure. I'm just trying to understand if there's just some that were sent to me.
They have been, obviously these are volunteer positions, and the reality is that there has been a magnitude of investment in the training, and because this is something that is very new to not only the state, but obviously to this community, and to, again, to further the discussion on what the roles and responsibilities are. There is a National Association of Police Oversight. It actually, they held their international convention here in Spokane just 2 years ago. And so we've been looking at those training opportunities, and some have gone to them, and then in some cases all of them. I don't know the exact travel schedules of the commissioners.
We got time for a couple more questions, folks. So how much of a setback is this to the overall mission and goal of the Ombudsman and the Commission to regain trust and improve accountability of the police department?
Do you want me to give you like a percentage? I think it's a huge setback. I'm very disappointed. I've been really like sick to my stomach for the last 3 days. After I read that report, it makes you sick to your stomach. I then called and asked, just as a person, professional to professional, my individual self only, I called all three of the commissioners and asked them to resign Monday night. It's upsetting where we're at. We've spent, I don't know how many hours I've spent in executive session during the negotiations, and then making sure that we negotiated a correct contract, making sure that this was implemented correctly, and then have to this go down just makes me sad. And then to have all this negative publicity about Spokane really, really upsets me, and thinks that it hurts our community immensely. So yes, it's a setback, and it's a huge setback, and it's really disappointing, this report coming out at this time.
And Commissioner Dolezal's actions have at least temporarily paralyzed this very important oversight function, and because of her actions, the people that she said she was trying to protect from prejudice are now not protected, at least for a while. It's not your fault, it's her fault.
I'd agree. This is, I'm not going to sit and accept some blame for this report or what she's done to shift attention from the real leaders in our community. You know, people like Tony Lodge at the Native Project, Frida Gandy at Martin Luther King Center. They're doing amazing work in our community, and that never gets any attention. Yet we're spending 5 or 6 days talking about this woman that didn't even have the guts to apologize to her own community and flies to New York on national television. That's horrible.
Mayor, can you speak to how much setback this is?
It is. It's a devastating setback for us. I think also, as the council president has said, we have an amazing community that will move our community forward, not only on this issue, but a myriad of issues. But it is a discussion that we are already having in reaching out to leaders in our community from diverse backgrounds of how we move forward from this. Again, it gets back to the truthfulness of what has happened in this case and in Ms. Dolezal's case in specifically. You know, this entire discussion on the Ombudsman Commission is about transparency. So it's also what is the transparency of not only Ms. Dolezal's background, but the work of the Commission, and now, as we just talked about, the timeliness of response to our own citizens. Rather to continue this discussion and to not have the discussion here locally, but rather to have it with those that it doesn't directly affect. And our community is much larger than that. and has said over and over again, and it has an amazing foundation. I do believe we have the foundation to move forward. It would have been much easier with a very truthful response, transparent in what has happened, and now at this point a timely response. There has been a myriad of opportunities to start this reconciliation and move forward, but we have not seen that in the slightest. And so as we move forward, I do believe we have some amazing leaders in our community that will continue this discussion, that frankly were here long before and will be here and are in the communities at the center of their mission, and so we will work with them, continue to have a great partnership with them as we move these important issues forward.
Mayor Coveney, can you update us on the ethics investigation into Dolezal, where that's at, and when you expect to see the results?
The ethics investigation and inquiry, rather, was forwarded yesterday. I have not heard back from the commission chair. They are aware of that. We provided the information that we had, and I have not seen whether they have scheduled a meeting to review those documents and make a determination based off of Ms. Dolezal's application. Have we had any updates on that?
No, it's still in the process yet. One final question.
Come on, Jeff, one more. Let's go. The surprise question at the end.
You hope to have made, as you said, a statement.
Exact amount. Like community investment over the community that's not is for our country. We've been and our support. There is so much work and personal time in this. To see this as a devastating setback is critical, but those folks to fall on a great position to move forward. We can get you the exact numbers for the actual contract. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.